Welcome to the Dark Zone, an adventure racing podcast.
Well, for me, the action is the juice. I'm in.
Oh, how can you not be romantic about adventure racing?
It's a metaphor.
I know it's a metaphor.
Say the word, Chef.
Let it rip.
For over 40 years, the American Himalayan Foundation has been on the ground, partnering with visionary leaders across the region. They bring education to girls at risk of being trafficked. They fund surgeries for children with disabilities who would otherwise be left behind. They support Tibetan refugees, protect fragile mountain environments, and stand by communities through earthquakes, pandemics, and floods. The foundation doesn't do fanfare, they do results. Quietly, relentlessly, with grit, respect, and deep local trust. If you've ever trekked, climbed, raced, or dreamed of the Himalaya, this is a way to give back to the people who call those mountains their home. www.himalayan-foundation.org. And as always with all of our charity partners, they pay nothing for this ad. Thank you for your support, and please visit their website. Welcome to the Dark Zone Adventure Racing Podcast. This is your host, Brian Gatens. One of our more popular type of episodes is happening right now. This is a course reveal podcast. If you're listening, you probably realize that Wilderness Traverse, which is a long-standing, well-respected race held in Canada, is serving this year as the North American Championship for the Adventure Racing World Series. So a great race to begin with, combined with a great big championship that's going on here. On the call today, we have Bob Miller, who is the event director, and we have Wayne Leek, who is the pretty much everything else media helping out. He will be my buddy for the course of the 30-hour race. So we have Bob and Wayne on the call today. Bob, want to come to you first for the first question. From a high-level perspective, right? This is a course reveal podcast, right? People are home listening right now, and they have their friends and their loved ones right on the course. From your perspective, give a high-level understanding of what the race will be experiencing when the race begins.
Yeah, so we're starting with a pretty big trek, around 27, maybe even 35 kilometers, depending which way the teams go. And it's really neat. It's one of the better, probably, trekking legs I think I've ever designed. We're getting into some pretty, I would say, even mountainous terrain for Ontario, which isn't two things that are synonymous. Usually when people think of Ontario, we're like lake country and forests, and it's the elevation changes aren't that big, but there is a band of what are called the La Cloche Mountains across the north part of Lake Huron, overlooking the North Channel. So a really cool leg. But the first checkpoint is actually really neat too. It's one of the favorite checkpoints I've ever set. There's legitimately like maybe 4 totally different route choices that are different by like many kilometers going one way or the other to get there. So I'm really, really interested to see how the teams decide they're going to attack checkpoint 1.
So on their way to checkpoint 1, and you mentioned the terrain and the topography, that's not really mountainous, not really there. Will the ground be, are they going through swamps? Are they moving through on trails? Are they bushwhacking? Like, what will the typical racer, and you mentioned 4 route choices, right? And maybe even more. So there's a lot out there, but what will the racer be experiencing at this point?
They'll be on a road for just a couple K, and then it's into the bush, into the forest, no matter where they are. But the forests in this area, when we were testing, they're quite nice. They're older. They don't have much undergrowth, so they're quite open. They were what I would call pleasant to move through. There are some swampy areas, but there wasn't that much swamp they should be crossing, depending on where they go. But they'll almost certainly be swimming between islands or even from the mainland over to this point that we have the first checkpoint on. So there's a whole bunch of variety for what they could end up doing before they get to the first checkpoint. And then, so that It's about, anywhere between, let's say, 7 and 10 kilometers to get through that first section. Then they're on to the next checkpoints, which just has a little bit more bushwhacking, just a couple kilometers. And then they're on trail actually for quite a while, which isn't normal for wilderness traverse, but the trails aren't as easy to follow as you might think. People who have hiked in the Lacloche, or I guess the Lacloche Trail in Killarney Provincial Park, which is just next door, they'll kind of know what I'm talking about. The trail is blazed, but it can be challenging to follow the blazes along those trail networks. And this is even more remote and rugged. I bet you I don't know, I want to say only dozens of people maybe hike what's called the Heaven's Gate Trail, which is where we're going after the first checkpoint. So it's not a very popular trail. It's just started to become a little bit more known in Ontario, and again, it's pretty remote. So it's neat. They'll think they're just going to be following trails, but they'll have to pay attention as they make their way towards TA1.
How complex is the navigation in there?
Most of the trails are mapped. There's not really any unmapped trails in this area. If they're on the proper trails, they should be okay. It'll just be following those trails and not accidentally going off trail. They shouldn't end up off trail for too much in that stretch. And then at the end, they actually end up on an old rail trail, an old rail bed, and they cross a really high trestle bridge with no sides on it. So it's pretty might freak some people out crossing that bridge as they make their way towards the TA.
Yeah, so I was Wayne sent me a picture of that train. It's a 1.8 kilometer hike in, Wayne. So bring your hiking boots. I think we're going to and we'll get that during the race, get some photos of the racers while we're up there.
Yeah, that'd be a great spot to get some pictures for sure, because it looks out over a really kind of expansive wetland area. That'd be a cool spot to go for sure.
Of the four legs, the second shortest is a 27 kilometer leg one, right? The hike. But then we get into a 45 kilometer paddle. Wilderness traverse, when we say paddle, it's a paddle and it's a portage, right? There's a lot of that. And when I had a chance to look at the race maps, it feels like to me that the portaging is going to be rather vigorous this year for the racing. Tell us about leg two.
This is likely the most linear point-to-point course we've ever set. As far as they're going from point A to point B, and it's not much looping or zigzagging or anything like that. So that's kind of a neat feature of this course. It'll live up to the name traverse. They're definitely traversing a big section of this part of Ontario. But into the paddling leg, yeah, you know what? From a portaging perspective, it's kind of right in the middle, maybe even on the low end for distance of portaging. I think it's probably around 3 kilometers total, broken up over, 5 or 6 portages. But there is a big one at the end that's over 2 kilometers. And that's kind of where we're getting most of that distance. So that'll certainly test teams. But to be honest, they'll have been paddling. There's some long stretches. I think like over 20 kilometers, this one stretch in the middle where there's no portage. So they'll be happy to be out of the boats and walking for a bit. Those of us that paddle a lot in Ontario, you kind of look forward to the portages, gives you a chance to stretch your legs. So that'll definitely be serving its purpose, even though it's a longer portage toward the end.
The lead teams will probably be finishing that first trek into the early mid-afternoon, with the rest of the field kind of stretching later in the afternoon.
The top teams should be off the paddle just as it's gotten dark. It'll just be getting dark when they're most likely coming through the end of that paddle. And then, the back of the pack, they may not even start the paddle until the top teams are getting off. Like usually there's some teams that get quite turned around on our treks, and I'm kind of expecting that. And I don't know what the forecast is now. It changes all the time, but it looks like it could be a hot weekend, and heat will definitely take its toll if that comes in on the teams with respect to slowing them down. But yeah, the kind of mid to behind the back of the pack, they're going to be paddling certainly at least half, if not a quarter of that in the dark. And that'll add to the challenge through there. The navigation will become a bit tricky in some spots where they have to zigzag through some lakes and kind of figure their way through. So it'll be interesting for those mid to back of the pack teams to figure that out.
Hitting that paddle section at night, navigation hard at night as it is, in a boat on the water using a compass and islands feels like it's even more complex. So for the person sitting at home, they probably shouldn't get too concerned if they see their teams getting turned around, because the navigation area is going to be complex no matter what.
A lot of adventure races, you end up, paddling on a lake and finding checkpoints around a single lake or down a river or something like this. This is real Ontario paddling in terms of its chain of lakes, big lakes, small lakes, and you're looking for the portage sign, or maybe it's not sign, or looking for a trail. So there is more complex navigation on this paddle leg than some adventure races will find.
Is it safe to say that a common issue for a lot of adventure racers is that their feet get chewed up? The fact that it's a 25, 27, 30 kilometer trek going into a long paddle, even with those portages built in, that we shouldn't be too concerned about the feet getting chewed up, or am I completely wrong about that? They're going to be wet and just tough, and the feet will be roughed up no matter what.
They'll have wet feet for sure from the swimming. The trail's a bit rocky toward the end, but I don't think the distance is long enough to really chew up their feet too badly. I'd be surprised if they were really hurting on the foot side from those legs. But yeah, I mean, they'll be happy to be off their feet. There's no doubt about that when they get to the paddle.
Gotcha. And they're paddling, and then you are supplying them with canoes, correct?
Yeah, teams can bring their own, but usually teams opt not to. I think there's only like 9 canoes that are being brought by participants. The canoes provided in Ontario for backcountry camping and tripping are quite good. They're high-end Kevlar canoes. So I don't even know if there's anyone in the mixed premier category that's not renting or using the supplied canoes. So yeah, they're good boats. They move pretty well.
Okay, so then we come through the Lake 2 paddle. Once again, to Wayne's point, big, long Ontario paddling, not really finding checkpoints, but going through the islands, big water. Eventually they turn to the northwest and they get to the bike. So I have the bike here, about 80 kilometers. What would that be like for the teams? What's the terrain like?
Yeah, so the bike is more back to civilization. So those first 2 legs are certainly living up to the Wilderness Traverse moniker. But the biking this year, just how the course played out, will definitely be a bit more civilized. We're known for having, like muddy, rutted ATV trails and things like that, which is often and we don't seek out these trails on purpose. It's kind of like what we can find to get people on bikes.
I think people might argue with that point, Bob.
Yeah,
having done your races.
I mean, I gotta test these things and check all the stuff out. I don't want to ride on that stuff as much as other people do. Usually, the mountain biking is getting people kind of between some of the other sections, and it's hard to find linear. All the fun mountain biking, like single track in Ontario, is in like contained pockets, so it's hard to find trails that connect. But, anyways, the biking will be faster than what they're used to. There's a fair bit of road riding, but the neat part of the mountain bike is we're hitting 2 of those purpose-built trail networks in Sudbury, the Walden Mountain Bike Club and then Kivy Park, where they have some purpose-built trails, and they're actually the flavor of the trail is a bit different. So like Walden, I would say, would be a more advanced trail network. They've built some, what I would call, there's beginner trails, but there's also intermediate and advanced trails in there, and it's rockier. It's a bit more rugged, so a better technical rider will do better through that stretch of trails. And then Kivy Park, we've chosen to use kind of some of the more moderate to like mid-level trails, and they've really invested in these trails. They're really fun, bermy, fast, like a fun trail network to go and rip through. So they'll get to hit those 2 spots in between these longer road sections, which is pretty neat for the event to hit some purpose-built mountain bike trails. Now, that being said, navigating those trail systems, the top teams will be doing it in the dark. That's going to be a challenge, if they've never biked in there before, which is likely 90% of the field. They're going to, it'll be take a little time to get used to the map and figuring out kind of where the trails go and how they relate. So I don't think we'll see teams lose like huge amounts of times, but certainly 5-10 minutes here and there, which at the pointy end of the race could be quite significant as they come down towards the end, just to kind of get used to the trail network and how the map reads and things like that.
It sounds like the trek is the trek in the beginning, and then the complex part is the paddle, most likely overnight through these big long paddles, navigation. But it sounds like the bike where they're not on their feet, right? But they get to move their legs around. They're out of the boat. It sounds like, dare I use the word, fun. Like this sounds like this is going to be a fast, great section for them to get to, which then leads into that final leg 4, which is the hike, which is only 10 kilometers. So what is that final hike like?
Yeah, so there is a bit of a sting in the tail at the end of the bike. We do hit a power line trail, which is more wilderness traverse-esque as far as the muddiness and ruggedness of the trail, but it's not very long. I think it's only like 7 kilometers or something like this. And that gets them into the area, Lake Laurentian Conservation Area, where the final trek is. And the trek's, I mean, it sounds short at only 10 kilometers, but we became aware of an old orienteering map that existed for the conservation area. I think the last orienteering race that was hosted on that map was in the 80s sometime. So it hadn't been known about or used for a long time. And we worked with the Toronto Orienteering Club to bring it kind of back up to date. And it's really a neat map. It's really one of the more interesting places to navigate in Ontario. People may not know, but Sudbury is a mining town. It's the big industry there. And there was a lot of pollution and acid rain. It killed a lot of the foliage years and years ago. And it created this almost moon-like landscape in the area. Now, they have an amazing rehabilitation story as well, where the forests are all coming back and they're regrowing, and that this area is very indicative of that, where there's, you know, the forest is probably like anywhere between 20 and 40 years old, so they're coming back, but they still have these amazing rocky outcroppings. So we've chosen a lot of high points as checkpoints for this leg, and they'll get to see nice, you know, over big lakes and off into the distance around Sudbury from these high points. So it'll be tricky. It'll be more intricate than what they're used to with the longer, like take a bearing and bushwhack for a number of kilometers. This last leg, they're going to be, you know, picking off features all the time. You know, we're on a trail, then we're off a trail just for 500 meters, and then back onto another trail. And there's a lot of that. So it's probably about half off trail, half on trail, but certainly paying attention to all the features on the map and hitting what are probably smaller features than we'd normally use in a wilderness traverse event, but just because the map is so good and it's such a fun area to navigate in. So it being in the dark, we saw this last year in the event, it's going to mix things up. I'll be impressed if all the top teams execute that trek perfectly. So I'm sure there's going to be some mistakes.
I think that's great that for the purpose of a championship race, right? This is a linear hard. This is the North American Championship, right? There's a lot on the line here. The fact that it doesn't appear like, and it sounds like, not that we're lucky, but you had access to that great map, and Toronto got involved, that you really created. This race is challenging from start to finish for a variety of reasons, right to the very end of the race, right? Where you don't just sort of back into the finish, but right to the very end. They're going to be those pointy, you know, part of the race teams really have to be focused on what they're doing. They can't let up. It's not just a ride to the finish.
No, totally. And yeah, the course, I really like it. I mean, it's got elements of expedition racing with, like, you know, a 45 kilometer paddling leg in a 24-hour race is pretty long. Even that first trek at almost 30 kilometers, I bet you some teams will go more than 30 kilometers. Again, that's pretty long for one leg for a 24-hour race. But then we have those shorter, you know, rides in the parks in and around Sudbury, and then that final trek, which is maybe more like you'd see in a shorter race with the more intricate checkpoints. So we're definitely going to test kind of all aspects of adventure racing with this course. I say this a lot of times. This is one of my favorite courses I've designed, but this one's up there for sure.
I was able to help Bob kind of over the winter and that as we kind of planned out where we could go with this. There was some like real hidden gems around the region that we kind of hope we could use for the course. Thankfully, we got access to the nature preserve on the first trek. On the paddle, we were able to get access and permission to go through a corner of the provincial park that is kind of the crown jewel of Ontario's provincial park system. Like you say, those two purpose-built trail networks for us to be able to ride through them. And then, to finish it off with a high quality orienteering map on some really challenging stuff. It's the building blocks were really, really kind of surprising that they all kind of came together, and really exciting to see what people are going to do with it.
What do you think the winning team time will be? The court's open for 30 hours. What do you expect to see your winners come across?
I think we have it under 18 hours. But that's like ideal conditions, no mistakes. I mean, if it's hot, it'll add an hour easily, maybe more. If it's like, a 30-degree day with humidex above 35 kind of thing, that's probably the hardest thing. If that happens, that'll be pretty nasty. But those top teams, it's crazy how fast they go. And then, it's also amazing the teams that pull up the rear and just keep plugging away and they finish. So that's one thing to think about, like coming off that paddle. You could have a team stop on the paddle, say they get turned around or things aren't going well and they sleep for the whole night. They could get up early in the morning, get started, get to the end of the paddle. As long as they're at the end of the paddle by, I think it's 10 a.m. is our cutoff. At the end of the paddle, they can still bike through most of the biking leg and get to the finish and finish the race. So that's something I'm going to remind the teams of as they're, contemplating those first two big legs, especially the mid to back of the pack teams. Don't throw in the towel. You got a lot of time to get through the course. And if you have to, stop, sleep for the night, get up and go in the morning, and you'll still get that finish.
I know we have an American team coming up, a team of high schoolers, and they're full steam ahead, just giving the course a shot. And this is their longest race ever, and it's racing a championship race, first off. So kudos to the kids for coming up there. I want you to whisper that advice to them multiple times. That being steady is the way to go, right? Because panic will set in too quickly if you have rough first track.
Yeah. I mean, this will be the second time we've had a team about this age participate in the event. And when the first team signed up, this was a team of high school kids from Toronto. And I gave them like 10, maybe 20% chance of finishing, but I severely underestimated these guys. They ended up finishing like mid-pack in the race, which was really impressive. So I bet you these guys, the team out of the U.S. is going to do something similar. I think they probably even have a bit more experience than this other team. So, but yeah, I think that'll be the key, is just getting through the night and just keep moving, not getting down.
Is there anything about the course that you want the folks at home to know about that we didn't talk about, in terms of places they'll pass through, the sites that they'll see, things like that, things that will really, when someone's home and they're dot watching and they're following the media, and there's going to be a lot of media coming out of it, I really look forward to being on site. Is there anything special that they should keep an eye out for from that perspective when they're home?
I'm trying to think about the team's experience through the course, and like the special places they're going to get to go. The La Cloche Conservation Reserve, which is the first provincial park they'll pass through. That's a gem. They'll get some stunning views from some high points through there. Killarney Provincial Park, which Wayne mentioned, again, it's like a crown jewel of paddling in Ontario. So that's another really cool experience. And then all the trails in and around Sudbury, and then Lake Laurentian Conservation Area at the end. They're really hitting some, I mean, this is fun. Even, I think our other co-race director, Barb Campbell, that's been with the event all these years, her comment when she saw the course was like, wow, this is one I would really like to race. And that kind of hits home for adventure races. I think we've got a really fun course.
Wilderness Traverse is a well-respected, well-loved race. It's on so many people's bucket list. It's a very, very challenging race. But there's the race itself, and then there's the partners that make the race happen. So, Bob, who do you want to call out specifically as being key supporters of the race?
Yeah, I mean, these races certainly don't happen without the landowners and the people that manage the land, the caretakers. So we had to reach out to a lot of different organizations for this event, and it started with. I guess the first would have been the provincial parks, so Ontario Provincial Parks. They were supportive of the idea, and they're allowing us to go through some really neat areas. We also are passing through what's called the Escarpment Biosphere Conservancy property. They own, I don't know, many. Probably hundreds, if not, I don't know if they're thousands, but many properties around the province. They're a conservancy group that's in the business of conserving, hidden gems and beautiful pockets of wilderness around the province. So the Escarpment Biosphere Conservancy was a big supporter from the beginning. And then our partners kind of at the beginning and the end of the paddle, Widgewa Lodge. They're at the start. They're our transition area at the start of the paddle. Really neat. They have new owners in there. The owner is actually an ex-professional triathlete. So he totally got the concept and understood kind of what we were trying to do, and they've been incredibly supportive. And same thing at the other end of the paddle, our transition areas at Penoche Bay Marina. A lot of time marina owners are just kind of like, what are these crazy people doing coming through? It's kind of a silly thing. But the owner there, Sarah, she's been super supportive since the beginning. Really, again, loves the concept of the event and the idea of what we're doing. So Penoche Bay Marina was a big one. And then we're into the city of Sudbury. Into kind of, it's a huge, if you look at the city of Sudbury, it encompasses a huge area, probably as big as almost any city in North America. But anyways, they again were very supportive, the tourism side, as well as the parks and the roads. All our permits went through no problem, and they were again very supportive. They own some of the land where we hit the Walden Mountain Bike Club. Again, Walden Mountain Bike Club. The executive director there and the members were super supportive. They understood, what we were trying to do and the difficulty it takes to organize an event. So they were on board from the beginning. Same thing at Kivy Park. Kivy Park is that other mountain bike area they're going to be riding through. Again, the executive, it really is amazing how supportive everyone in this city was of the event. And we don't often find that in different parts of Ontario. So yeah, again, Kivy Park, they were amazing. And then we're kind of biking into Lake Laurentian Conservation Area, and we had the same reception there. What can we do to help? How can we help make this happen? And same thing at the university, Laurentian University at the finish. The phys ed director of the buildings there totally gets it. He was on board from the beginning. So I don't know if we just got lucky and ran into the right organizations or talked to the right people, but it's really been like a treat. That is one of the most fun parts for me as an organizer, is meeting the people and getting to know the different groups along the way. And yeah, this one came together really well. So those were the key landowners and managers. And then we have other sponsors supporting the event: MRF's Pack Rafts, Harmon's Beer, Orienteering Ontario. I shouldn't leave them out. They're a big part of getting that map updated with the Toronto Orienteering Club. We're naming that final trek the Orienteering Ontario Challenge. Kawartha Dairy, they've been a long-time supporter. They provide chocolate milk at the finish line for the finishers, so some neat touches there. But yeah, no, I mean, all the supporters have been great. Wayne could probably chime in. I'm probably maybe missing a few of the sponsors.
Algonquin Outfitters has been very supportive, because if you can appreciate, this becomes a small navy of canoes that they have to provide. I forget, how many canoes are we up to, Bob, for this race?
They're providing 88, and then another 20 are coming from Widgewa Lodge. So it'll be our biggest canoe fleet. It's going to look
over
amazing.
100 canoes, yeah.
How big is the field? Is it the standard size field, or is this bigger than usual?
No, this is bigger than usual by about 13, 14 teams. It'll be our biggest. So we were usually around 60, and now we're at 74 with some last minute dropouts. But yeah, it's a big field.
Big field, big course, big day. So before we let you go, we said about 30 minutes. We're about 30 right now. So I want to let our listeners off the hook and then go watch those dots. It's a 7:30 a.m. drop for this edition, a 10 a.m. start, and I believe a 4 o'clock finish on Sunday. Are all those times correct?
Yep. Yeah, you got it.
And the very last question is this for the folks who are at home. We always tell people that they are to look at the dots and to look at this at the tracking with a grain of salt, right? And it has to be certified by the race officials. Things have to be reviewed. So we want to say to everybody who's sitting at home, watch those dots, talk about those dots, but be really thoughtful that what you're seeing, if your team doesn't move for a while, that's not always a bad thing. Sometimes that's a tracker issue. Sometimes they're resting. There's a lot of support out there for the teams. And so for the at-home dot watcher, be patient and your team will call you when they're drinking their chocolate milk.
That's right.
And always remember, under that dot that's not moving fast enough, there are probably 4 tired people.
Well, all right, listen, man, I'll let you guys go. Thank you for all you've done on behalf of the community. Thank you for hosting the North American Championship via Wilderness Traverse. Good race, and I will see you on the course.
Awesome. Thanks to you too, Brian. It was great.
Thanks, Brian.
Well, there you have it, folks. Another episode of the Dark Zone, an Adventure Racing podcast. If you're new here, a first-time listener, please head over to your platform of choice and like, click, and subscribe. Also visit our website at ardarkzone.com. That's ardarkzone, all one word, .com. If you're a longtime listener, thanks to your continued loyalty to the show. We continue to gain subscribers and in popularity, and we are delighted to bring what we can to the adventure racing community. And remember, as we always say, if you keep racing, we'll keep talking.